If you're wanting to speak on the closed session item, please turn in your speaker slips.
Good afternoon. I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Encinitas City Council for Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 3 p.m. And if the clerk could please call the roll.
Councilmember Lyons?
Here.
Councilmember Ehlers?
Here.
Councilmember Hensy is absent. Deputy Mayor Blackwell?
Here.
And Mayor Kranz.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present with the exception of Councilmember Hensy.
Okay, thank you. We are convened today for two closed session items. The first is a conference with the real property negotiator under the authority of Government Code Section 54956.8. Properties are the parts of the public roadway on Piraeus Street and Plato Place adjacent to APN numbers 254-144-01 and 216-110-35. City negotiators are Scott Noya, Special Counsel, and Jay Schwarm, Administrative Services Director, negotiating with Brian Grover and Lennar Homes of California, LLC, under negotiation, easement, price, and terms. The second item is a closed session item for public employee performance evaluation under the authority of Government Code Section 54957, and it will be performance evaluation of the city manager. So we have public speakers.
Yes, we do. We have several. I'm going to call you three at a time. Donna Westbrook, Susan Turney, and then Richard Weston. And I will announce that Councilmember Hensy has arrived. Record will show that all members of the City Council are now present.
Donna Westbrook, Encinitas. First of all, I don't know why you're even talking about giving city property that belongs to the people, not to you. Believe it or not, it doesn't belong to you. To a developer that's going to make more housing that it doesn't even comply with the state requirement. Why are you doing that? Almost an acre. An acre can be a park for kids in the area, not for a developer. So think about that as you go in and they're told, we're just going to get a little lease from you. And you, who are supposed to be very smart at government, would say, no, you're not getting it. Make your project smaller or make your project some other place. But don't try to do it in that area. It hasn't been looked at in environmental. You're going to take out environmental areas, and you're giving away our property. Think about it again. Our property, not your property. So I don't want to hear anything about we couldn't do it because the state said. The state does not tell you to give away our streets, our property, and our little amount for a park. So don't say you're going to do it. If you do, then what you're going to do is trying to screw us, basically. Sorry for that word, but that's what you're trying to do. So don't say anything about this. Cancel it, number one, and say it's not going to be done. Tell them to make their project smaller. Then we'll look at it and see if it's worthwhile. But do not, and I say do not, sign a lease, give any property away to anybody who comes in as a developer. None of you are doing this very well, I understand, because you're trying to make it sound like you have to do it. You do not have to do it. You're giving away our property, city property, residents' property. Do not say yes to a lease. Please. Thank you.
Susan Turney, Encinitas. Mr. Grover/Lennar should not use the public right-of-way, but instead their own property to construct storm drain, bioretention basins, and their other uses. The notion that we need to ensure maximum profits for developers is absurd, and I think we can all agree that this project will pencil out just fine without giving up public right-of-way. If this were not the case, the request would have come at the beginning of the project application process. This council has emphasized the need for safer pedestrian and cycling access. Adequate setbacks are essential to support their safety and support your stated goals. Right-of-way once forfeited can never be returned. Landscaping buffers for sound, vehicle pollution, and visual protection are musts for residents, not nice-to-haves. Easement vacation requests are never intended to benefit the residents. The upside is all on the developer's side. As this is not a legally required concession, you do not have to grant it. It reminds me of what our planning department now calls the Leucadia Starbucks nightmare. In that case, the developer claimed his project would not pencil out without a third business on the site. In order to comply with parking code, the lot was expanded, and in order to comply with landscaping code, the easement had to be vacated. In addition, city planners forgot to require on-site parking for delivery trucks. These entirely blocked the single northbound lane of Orpheus. It's a regular sight we see, and there have been accidents and near head-on collisions. If you talked to the fire department in private, they would say they were appalled at the city's action. In public, of course, they were pressured to remain silent, something they would also tell you in private. Be careful of unintended consequences. With Starbucks, the city gave the developer an easement that was not a legal requirement. You're looking at doing the same thing here. This came at the expense of residents who are permanently stuck with a bad situation that can never be mitigated. Promised improvements to the intersection light timing turned out not to be in Encinitas' control, as the city claimed, but rather in Caltrans. The planning department admitted to the public later that Caltrans had told them they would never change the traffic light timing, and this was known to staff before the project was approved. Bottom line, unless this vacation is required by law, don't do it. Residents only will suffer as a result.
Next speakers, Richard Weston, Jim Brackus, and then Charles Smith.
Hi, folks. I know you have a difficult meeting ahead, and I just thought I'd give you just a few of my thoughts. I think the main reason we're here is the Piraeus Point project and the selection of the land was flawed from the beginning. This is not the type of site that's optimal for development, and you've seen all of the many slides, et cetera, the Encinitas Community Collective has put together on that. And another huge flaw in that is missing those 300 low-income units that were supposed to be on that site, and how many will actually be there after this site is cut down after the litigation, maybe 5. That seems very fraudulent in the selection process, or perhaps it's just lack of experience in selecting the areas. Anyway, why should you not give that land away? One is, think long-term. 10 years, 20 years, 75 years, 100 years, you're going to need a 4-lane road on Piraeus. Right now, when I came here, I couldn't go down to Piraeus and get on I-5 without traveling on local roads. Why? Because there's no right-of-way and there's not enough room to put that northbound ramp on. So think long-term. Do not give this land away. Ideally, Lennar would like to have that as part of their property. Seems to us, the neighbors, that they should put it on that whatever, I don't know how many acres it was, property. We shouldn't have to give it to them. However, if you do give it to them, lease it, make it a win-win. Don't charge Lennar the lease, charge the homeowners. Homeowners, if you do $200,000 a year payment, that'd break down to about $112 per month per unit. That would enable the city to run a $3 million bond to do the improvements on Plato. So that's something you may want to think about. Don't give it away, lease it, because in 100 years, 75 years, 150 years, you'll need the land to make that road go. In my remaining 30 minutes, I'd just like to say I am very disappointed about the 300 housing units. My son is disabled. We have caregivers who have commuted for over 15 years from Escondido, Chula Vista, and Oceanside with no hope of ever getting anything. So the headline I would see down the line, wealthy San Diego enclave denies 300 housing units but approves a 10-acre park for deprived local wealthy residents.
Jim Brackus, be followed by Charles Smith, Kristen Smith, and then Karen Caden.
Council, Mayor Kranz, it's been a while. I won't even go back on the traffic issue on this project. It's absolutely crazy because I've lived over there for 30 years. And you can get 4 cars on Piraeus onto La Costa. Your traffic study was absolutely obscene. The problem is some really smart guy a long time ago said, you know what the definition of stupidity is? Doing the same thing over and over again. Now, why are we here? We're talking about those parcels so they can do a retention pond? Now, didn't the city in planning look at those plans and see their plan and saw the retention plan on their land? Is there a map of such? Why are they going to use our land for their retention pond? Second of all, we already discussed this 2 years ago. Get an appraisal. Make them pay for it. If you're going to do it, you guys aren't going to get I won't say that. You're not going to deny this project because you're too far along. Lennar is too powerful. But don't lease it to them. Make them pay for it. Because that is absolutely stupid that you did not look at the original plan to verify that that retention plan was going to be on their property. So what if they lose a building? It's their property to put their retention pond. You don't come to the city and you guys bend over and give them $3 million, I think it was appraised at. This is what you're doing. You guys keep making the same mistakes. And Mayor Kranz, you've been a lifelong resident here. You and the predecessor, Mayor Blakespear, I hope you guys ride down these streets and go, yeah, I was part of the destructive councils that put properties all over this place. You've destroyed the fabric of this town. Besides what you're doing here on Piraeus, you spent all this money on beautiful signs. Ducadia. Well, now you're going to go under the bridge, and you're going to see nothing but mercury lights on 150 units. Never should have happened. There's got to be some sense. You just can't, all right, I'm sorry about your lawsuits, but you just can't do that. You can't just put Clark on the board there for all those units. And I have no idea why L7 has been given this cloak of, being away from being housing. I just don't know it. So I don't know what you're going to do about it, but you better not give away that land. That would just be the crux of a very, very bad message on yours. $3 million to Lennar is, they spend more money on coffee a day. So do me a favor, make a good decision on this land, keep the retention pond on their property. Thank you.
Mayor Krantz and the City Council, I'm listed as Charles Smith, but I go by Rick. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at today's meeting as we approach a critical decision on regarding the right-of-way on Piraeus and Plato Streets. For the past few years, developers have requested and received several concessions, including a density bonus and including a few for exchange for a few affordable units on the projects. When residents raise legitimate concerns about overdevelopment, concerns in some cases that compromise safety or for sure the quality of life, the council's consistent response was, "Our hands are tied." But today, you have an opportunity to do what's right for Encinitas and the community. I urge you not to approve or grant the developer the use of the city-owned right-of-ways. The neighborhood and the city have already given enough concessions to the developer along the way. If the developer requires additional space for key elements of their projects, they should be required to reduce the scope of the project and include it on their own property. Tonight, or I guess this afternoon, your hands are not tied, and this is your decision to make and live with. Thank you.
Next speaker is Kristen Smith, Karen Caden, and then Dennis Caden with a time donation from Bonnie Bobzian.
Good afternoon, Mayor Krantz and the City Council members. My name is Kristen Smith, and I've lived in Leucadia, District 1 for nearly 25 years. Looking back at the history on this project and others, the phrase "give and take" seems to be the best description of the situation. But in reality, it has often been the homeowners in the city that give, and while the developer takes. Such is the case in the Piraeus Point project, where there are two issues that I find personally unacceptable. The failure, number one, is the failure of the developer to underground its utility lines. This has been a straightforward request for 2024, and especially given the fire situation in our state and also locally, I believe that this must be remedied. Obviously, these are fire hazards around this property. Burying the lines would at least mitigate that risk, and not to mention mitigate the unsightliness of lining the hillsides of the power lines. The second item is the failure to provide adequate resident and overflow parking. The shortfall of on-site parking will undoubtedly result in excessive parking on surrounding streets and neighborhoods. This will create significant challenges for pedestrians, including school children, cyclists, and everyday neighborhood parking needs. Now the developer is back and wants to use the city-owned right-of-way to complete his project without giving us anything in return. The matter before you today is not a state-mandated decision from Sacramento. Your hands are not tied. I urge you to do the right thing and deny the developer's request. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Mayor, Council, 3 o'clock today. A lot of people are working, and I really appreciate the group that showed up today, and thank you for allowing us to speak. 1980. I've been here for 42 years, and I've been living in the same home that's 800 feet away from Piraeus Point. So I'm very familiar, and I want to also thank all 5 of you coming to see the piece of land. And we all know that decisions might have been made without considering the slope, and that is a natural slope. And then what you walked on, the step up, was the part that was shattered into Piraeus Point Street for 2 weeks and had to be cleaned up. And was several lawsuits over that. So anyway, here I am. And I also walked for incorporation. 1986, voters became aware that the county had massive development plans pressuring Encinitas, the surrounding areas, just like today. That's why we incorporated from the county, is to determine its future to be a general law city.
We inherited low-quality set of infrastructure to serve our city's growth general use. City services are to be defined as it enhance our living conditions and maintain our environment. Encinitas residents deserve local control over city taxpayers' right-of-ways for future improvements. City Council approved Piraeus Point to build on the Cannon property parcel, not on public city road, right-of-way. We grant the developer to have ingress and egress to the parcel, not to own it. We have requested several meets with Encinitas to improve Plato Place intersection with Piraeus Street with a right-hand turn onto Piraeus Street for safety and avoid future congestion. We are also near Caprice School, and there is a lot of, we only have one way in and out, and that's Plato, where we live. And that probably is about 60 homes. Here I am. Plato Place is narrow and unsafe to walk on. We need a safe walk to school. We want Piraeus Point project stay within proper setbacks on the parcel. The mobility element plan for Piraeus Street is to be 50 feet and will create a larger setback. Maintain the scenic I-5 view corridor designation revealing Piraeus Street beauty of the inland bluffs, the Bataguitas Lagoon, and the San Andreas Mountains. The developer, Lennar, and his assistant director received the incentives and waivers to benefit their project. We may not ever have this row back for safety and public improvements for our children's future to good planning. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Dennis Caden with time donation from Bonnie Bobzian, followed by Tanya Bell, David Hill with a time donation from Teresa Ornelas, followed by Cindy Cremona.
Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Caden. I left this out for you to go through. On page 1, this is from the Coast News when the City Council approved it for the audience. It says, Encinitas reluctantly okays Piraeus Point over community opposition, and then blah, 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 blah. Then it says, but the council said its hands were tied, ultimately denying an appeal of the project and allowing it to move forward. So one of the other speakers brought it up too. I'm very glad tonight that your hands are not tied. So we are asking you to deny the use of the right-of-way to Lennar, please. So the next page shows the controversy that took place on this project. So after you approved the project, another group, Endangered Habitats League, sued the city and Lennar, and it seems like they were right. There is habitat there that needs to be protected. And then the whole thing about lack of infrastructure, again, I mean, why didn't they have this in their plan when they started? I mean, here we go again. We have to give up city property for somebody else's infrastructure. They're responsible. The next page is part of the article where it just says on the bottom, one of our members, one of our residents says, I do not hold Lennar in any harm or bad feelings. This is their job. They're a very public company, and they're loud about the fact that they make a lot of money. Our job as residents is to come to you guys who we voted here to protect us. And I think here's your chance. The next is why you want to save the right-of-way. And on our trails maps, in part of the circulation element, Piraeus has a trail, and I have pictures here that show a trails map paid for by Sandag that's at the end of La Costa Avenue and Piraeus. Here's the North Coast Trails at Normandy and Piraeus, and here's at Normandy and Urania. So the trails, if Sandag is spending money on a trails program, it must exist. And we need to protect it. You need to help us protect it. At the bottom, it gives on the mobility element study 42 and 42A, which is Piraeus Street, the entire length from La Costa Avenue to Leucadia Boulevard, and then Olympus Street. Now, on Olympus, we have probably one of the most fantastic parks in San Diego County, if not Southern California, for kids to come play. It's not a whole lot of geography. And as someone mentioned earlier, park space doesn't have to be big. It just needs to have the right equipment on it, or the space for people to burn their energy or relax. So again, do not give away the right-of-way for any of the developers. The next page is a big map that just shows where all the trails are, and it has the legend to show that it's to be a hard pathway, 4 to 6 feet wide. And so after that is a map where Piraeus on the mobility element is supposed to be 50 feet wide. And it's supposed to have a biking trail and the walking trail on it. So you need to save the right-of-way to accomplish that sometime down in the future. Now, what we suggest in the neighborhood is when you look at Plato Place, that there be a serpentine sidewalk coming down the side because it's a hilly surface. Anybody in a wheelchair or walker will probably lose control, and that would not be good. On Piraeus Street, when we spoke to the people in the city on the mobility element and traffic, they suggested that there be a center left turn lane. So when Piraeus gets widened, when people are coming from La Costa Avenue to get back into Piraeus Point, they're going to be making a left-hand turn. That would block traffic on Piraeus. So if they have a median turning lane, that gets them where they can queue to get into their development, and it doesn't block traffic coming by. And then again, for Piraeus coming northbound, that they have enough room to pull over like a, kind of a lane, just a side lane, queuing lane, for them to get out of the way slow, because they're going to have to go slow and then go up a big hill in order to get there. So again, there's a lot of future uses that the city of Encinitas needs to keep that right away and not give it away. It's egregious to me that the city would give a developer, a for-profit developer, our property for him to maximize housing when he's only giving us the absolute minimum of affordable housing. He's given us 15 units, which is 10%. So who is he actually benefiting? So here's our chance to say, not good enough, not good enough. Let us keep our right-of-way and keep our neighborhood's integrity and community character sane. As Tony said when the approval went, he said it's going to be painful. And it is painful for all of us. Thank you very much.
Tanya Bell, followed by David Hill with a time donation from Teresa Ornelas, followed by Cindy Cremona, and then Cynthia Shea Palmer.
Honorable Mayor, council members, hello. I'm Tanya Bell. My family moved to Leucadia in 1971, and I live 4 doors down from the house I grew up in. So I've been in District 1 my whole life. I was once told that it was admirable to live in the same neighborhood for so long. However, I consider it an honor to live there. At this time, I strongly oppose the use of the right-of-way and wish not to give Lennar the ability to build on this location. Lennar should utilize the space within their own property boundaries. Still outstanding in this development from a couple years ago are the questions of safety and traffic and environmental impact. And there's so many questions that we have not received answers of, so this is just, the right-of-way issue is just one more thing that shouldn't even be in question. The infrastructure is basically not there to accommodate Lennar's acquisition of this right-of-way. It's not going to work. If you live in the neighborhood, as Dennis just said, it's narrow, it's small, it's dangerous. Between the new housing developments, as we all know, on Vulcan, Lacoste Avenue, Sheridan, at the top of the street, the top of Lucadia Boulevard, the farms, traffic is a total nightmare. Emergency vehicles, even now, can't get into our little neighborhood. It's a total gridlock, especially during school hours. We can't get in and out of our driveway. If I need to get somewhere at 9, I have to be out of the house at 7. If I want to go home at 3, I need to either leave work and be there at 1 or after 3. It's stuck. There's nowhere to go. Ever since they took away the loop up around Capri School and back down, there's only one way in and out. So the danger factor with potential for fire hazard, it's very scary. So this development was once described by City Council as being notched into the hillside. This development is not notched in the hillside. It's not Santorini. It's going to be an eyesore perched on top of land that is dark and quiet and peaceful, and it's just a complete eyesore. So at least do not give away the right-of-way in our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor Tony Krantz and Council. This is deja vu all over again. We were talking September the 7th last year, 2023, on the same subject. And we've discussed many times since this project. And I think if this is built, Mayor Tony, this may well be Tony folly of building this monstrosity on the hillside. It has nothing but consequences that will forever live in the saga of this project. And I recommend strongly that you do not give away the farm, so to speak, which you all probably know of that term. But obviously, there's problems here. I did give you a letter here. I'd really rather not go through everything, but one of the big things here is that when this was approved as an EIR by this council, it seems that there was no permit from Caltrans for the hydrology. They did not approve it. And they refused to approve it because all the flow values were incorrect. Pasco Laratsuda, the civil engineers, did not comply. And there was a number of issues going on, not only that from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, specifically to the regards of grading in accordance with the Endangered Species Act on Section 10. Which seems to be ignored and no one seems to know about it, but it's going to be in your face pretty soon if this project gets off the ground. And that is every time a truck goes north on Parias, it constitutes a take, T-A-K-E, an impact on the gnatcatchers, on the other endangered species and threatened species that live on the Caltrans protected property, as well as the gnatcatchers on this property, as well as on the gnatcatchers on the other side of Plato, on Christine, which was subject of the lawsuit, okay, by the Endangered Habitats League. And as a member or sub-member of the SANDAG, which Joy was part of as the chair on the mitigation, I talked to these people, and they say, no, absolutely not. Notwithstanding the fact that you're going to go against the city regulations on policy for grading, which is not allowing more than 4 feet, but the fact is, it is universally in the civil engineering world throughout the U.S. that you do not remove the site in order to fit the project. That is totally polar opposite of what engineers are supposed to do, let alone the fact, and this is one we already discussed maybe a little week ago, we had a bluff collapse on Encinitas Lagoon. They are trying to create, by removal of 83,000 cubic yards, which is going to take 12 to 15,000 trucks going up and down Piraeus. Removing that, you are developing an inland coastal bluff, which is subject to groundwater and water tables, and who knows what's going to happen during that period of time. And you're putting everybody's home immediately to the east in danger. Now, don't tell me your hands are tied on this issue. They're not. Today, this is a discretionary issue that you can just walk away from and say, no, we're not going to do it, because this is a project that is not wanted by the people here in Encinitas, period. We don't want it. I have lived here for 45 years, and I've never seen such an egregious situation that's going on in order to satisfy a huge multi-billion organization that is in more than 22 states, have their own businesses all over the darn place, represented on the New York Stock Exchange, and we just granted another one to another multi-billion organization, the Toll Brothers, and they are in the same location as Lennar. They don't need your help. They don't need the people's help. We need empathy from you as the elected people to represent us and to do what is normal, and that is hang on to that property because they're not making it anymore. This is the right of way, and this is the public's property, not one to give away to a for-profit organization to make millions and millions of dollars off of this thing. I mean, we've gone over this many times, maybe to ad nauseum, but I mean, I hope that this gathering of people here with their opinions, you will listen to them and you will abide by them and do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Next speakers, Cindy Cremona, Cynthia Shea Palmer, Jerry Sadomka, and then Dolores Welty.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Cindy Cremona, I live in Leucadia. I empathize and agree with all the previous speakers. I did want to mention, for those who may not recall, that both Clark and Piraeus were swapped out at the very last minute during the fifth housing element for L7. And boy, did we get screwed. Excuse my French. Also, I want to go back a little bit in time and read from the June 21st, 2023 appeal. This is the appellant position for street vacation. While the significant traffic impacts will not be mitigated, the City Council is now tasked with deciding whether to vacate 0.96 acres of right-of-way as part of this project in order to add gross acreage to the site. The city's right-of-way should not be vacated and should instead be utilized to improve Piraeus Street so that it can safely accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. Additionally, as mitigation, and because the developer intends to preserve adjacent parcels along Piraeus Street as open space, the city should require the developer to extend the proposed pedestrian path that will be constructed adjacent to the project to the north along Piraeus Street to La Costa Avenue, where pedestrians could safely cross the street to the sidewalk that runs along La Costa Avenue on the south side of the Bataquitos Lagoon. Finally, the ECC encourages the city require that the developer fund the reopening of Piraeus Street to southbound traffic at Leucadia Boulevard, which would divert through traffic from Normandy Road and Urania Avenue. This was the staff's response. At the May 18th, 2023 hearing, the Planning Commission included recommendations regarding the street vacation, including to require the assessment of a fair market value of the land and utilize the funds toward a safe path to Capri School and Olympus Park. After further evaluation of the status of ownership of Perea Street, the proposed street vacation is no longer required as the city owns the land in fee title. The City Council will consider a request at a future hearing, if necessary, to authorize the proposed improvements within the limits of Piraeus and Plato Streets' rights-of-way. Staff recommends for City Council to consider removing condition SPCL 05 and replacing condition SCA 11 of resolution number PC 2023-08 with the following conditions of approval. I don't have time to finish it,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Cynthia Shea Palmer. Today you'll be voting on a very important issue. To maximize their profits, Lennar is requesting the ability to use nearly 1 acre of the citizens' right-of-way land on Piraeus for their projects. In my opinion, this is not in the best interest of the city, as this land should be used for pedestrian and car traffic. They already have plenty of acreage to build the project. I mean, the engineers are given a boundary of where things are supposed to be designed. They should stay inside that boundary. It's a given. It doesn't matter if you're mechanical, electrical, or civil. You're given boundaries, and they are wanting to exceed there. So there's no reason to let them, break the rules of what their givens are. Why should we be assisting them in a giveaway as they have done so little to improve the community of Leucadia, which we've heard a lot, we've heard many of those points already. In reality, we are in the midst of a leadership change in Encinitas. As the citizens, we have been frustrated by decisions that have been made. And although it may be painful for those not elected, please look deep inside yourself and think why you wanted to serve our great city. One wants to protect the city and the environment and encourage well-thought-out growth. Digging aggressively into the hillside, placing nearly 150 units into a small parcel without adequate parking, and now requesting Encinitas land to finish the project because the engineers didn't fit it inside the boundaries they were given, is just a way to maximize their profits at the expense of our citizens. And the state of California does not require the local city to give up land in this way. So please vote no and require Lennar to go back and request a better plan. In addition, regarding Plato Place and pedestrian traffic, if the project is approved and serious upgrades are not made to pedestrian safety on Plato Place, Encinitas will be set up for a potential lawsuit. I would suggest that if you approve this land giveaway to Lennar, that in exchange, have Lennar pay for upgrading Plato all the way to Cador so that the children of Piraeus Point will be able to safely walk to Capri Elementary School. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Final two speakers, Jerry Sadomka, followed by Dolores Welty.
Jerry Sadomka, Cardiff by the Sea. I'm not going to speak about the project, but I know about it. What I want to speak about how I think the City Council is abusing the closed session law. You were all supposed to have a yearly training on the limits that you can take into a closed session meeting. And I've seen abuse over there. I was the one who called attention to Catherine Blakespeare when she had 2 meetings in closed session about the homeless parking lot on the leash tag property. These are public issues that need to be discussed in public. You should not be going into closed session. And I'm calling the lawyer's attention to him because it's his job to see that you do not violate the Brown Act. And there are also yearly training requirements for that, and especially special training for anybody who's new on the council. And Allison, I'm asking you, did you get special training when you got on the council? Probably not. And all the time when our previous lawyer, Glenn Sabin, was on the council, not a single time did I see him mention any violation of the Brown Act. He always gave the report like everything was perfectly normal. And on the leash tag homeless parking lot, he was dead wrong on that one. Thank you.
Dolores Welty, I'm very disappointed this is even a question. Of course, you do not give away public land or sell it. You do not. Period. A developer comes in and he works on speculation and he tries to get everything he can. And people become enablers. Your staff becomes an enabler. Your planning commission enables, and sometimes you yourself enable. And I have talked personally how angry I was about the one on Melba, when you let the developer put 3 extra feet of fill. You've heard a report about Lennar. They make 27% profit. That was brought forward long ago. That's a pretty good profit when you consider the Defense Department only makes 10%. And when AT&T had the telephones for the whole nation, they were allowed 7% as a monopoly. I would allow a developer 7%. They can still go home with lots of money. I am disgusted to think that you might give this away. Please say no. It is our property. We want to keep it. And the developer Lennar has plenty of money to fit his development in there and give us what we ask. Why is he begging? Beggar.
That does conclude speakers.
Okay, thank you all. And we are, in fact, adjourning to closed session next under the authority of Government Code Section 54956.8, and we will be discussing price and terms of a potential lease, or excuse me, an easement, and we are not going to give it away. So with that, we will adjourn.